All right, everyone. Hello. We're going to get started in the interest of time. Welcome, everyone, to Retail X. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sapna Shah. I'm an angel investor. I invest in the future of retail and consumer. Um, I run these sessions a couple times a month. The next one will be on March 18th. And you'll get some more information about that after this session. This call is being recorded, so if you can't make it through the whole thing, you can find it on the YouTube channel in about a day or two. If you have questions during the kind of first half, which will be a moderated discussion, you can just put them in the chat, or you can just wait till we get to the Q&A at the end. But definitely, we are looking forward to answering your questions, and we'll have hopefully plenty of time to do that. So without further ado, let me introduce Cora Miller. Cora, welcome.
Hello, good afternoon. Thanks so much for having me.
So excited to have you here. Why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Young King Hair Care?
Absolutely. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Cora Miller. I am the co-founder and CEO of Young King Hair Care, which is the first multicultural grooming and wellness brand for young men. Prior to launching Young King, I actually worked in corporate America. So I worked for United Health Group as a VP for External Affairs, where I led our philanthropic strategy across the country. It was great doing that. My husband always calls me the do-gooder because I've always been into community and being able to provide support for those that really, truly need it. But having my son really inspired me to launch Young King. This all got started simply because I was a first-time mom and was looking for products to help me style my young son's hair, and quickly realized when I was shopping the aisles and Googling online that there was nothing created specifically for boys of color. And so that bothered me for a number of reasons that I won't get into, but I decided to do something about it and officially launched Young King in December 2019. So it's been a whirlwind over a year now. I can't believe we're just over a year, but it's been a whirlwind in that short time, and excited to have these retail partnerships now with Target and launching with Walmart in the next couple of weeks. So excited to be here and certainly share my perspective, insights, and be however helpful that I can to you all today.
Amazing. Okay, great. So you've already alluded to this, but I want to sort of kick off with kind of my first question, which is that you launched in December 19th and in December of 2019,
Mhm.
and you launched as a D2C brand, right?
Correct.
At what point in that evolution, and obviously it's only just over a year ago,
Yeah.
but at what point in that evolution did you and your co-founder start to plan a wholesale strategy? Was that in your plan from the beginning, or did that just evolve over time?
It definitely wasn't our plan to begin with. We knew that wholesale partnerships was going to be a key part of our business channel strategy. So from the onset, when we created the business and the brand, we wanted to prime it for such partnerships if the opportunity presented itself. So for us, what that looked like was recognizing that, anything as simple as our packaging and what that would need to look like in order to stand out on shelf, or even a simple thing as having a UPC on it. You'd be surprised that a lot of brands start off and don't even have a UPC or label on their products. And so for us, those were elements that we wanted to start with because that was our goal from the get-go. Another key element for us when we were thinking about future wholesale partnerships was around pricing strategy. And I know we'll talk a little bit about that, but that's something that we started examining even before launching. We knew that our e-commerce pricings were going to probably have to be different when we went into retail. So that was something that we just needed to consider early on and kind of navigate that accordingly once we were able to get those retail partnerships secured.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that this was kind of always in the strategy and you were already thinking about it. And I think that's so important because I think a lot of times, founders do kind of focus on the DTC because that's where you're starting. But yeah, all of those things, even kind of how big the package is and how it sits on the shelf and versus the kind of adjacent products is so important. So, why did you think wholesale was going to be really important? What were you looking to get out of kind of these retail relationships?
So for us, having that channel is fundamentally connected to why I created Young King in the first place. And that was because when I walked down the aisle, I did not see products that were created for my son. And I just firmly believe that you should be able to see yourself in the products that you use. And so I wanted that experience not only for my son, but for boys who look like him. So for us, yes, we were definitely going to start on e-commerce, but we knew that retail was going to happen sooner than later so that we could provide that same experience that my son didn't have for others. And so our mission, it's all around how are we redefining male grooming for the next generation? And we want to be able to create accessible products for any Black or brown boy across this country and of course the globe, big ambitions we have gone on here. But so for us, that's why we always started with that premise, that the retail partnerships were going to play a key role in our business channel mix.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about the process. I know that your process of getting into Target and Walmart was very unusual and
To say the
probably not
least.
100% replicable. But let's talk a little bit about kind of how it happened with both partners.
Yes, happy to. So for Target, as I mentioned, we launched in December 2019. So one of the very first events that we did, which was kind of our big reveal launch to the world, was at Target and Essence Holiday Market place that they had here in Atlanta in December 2019. We were able to vend at that event, and in doing so, we were actually able to meet a lot of Target leaders. So they were coming by to meet with the different founders, talk to different brands. And it was during one of those conversations that I had that they shared with us about the Target Accelerator program. So again, we were a new brand. We had no idea about Target having even an accelerator program, but they were looking specifically at that time for emerging beauty brands. And the whole purpose of their accelerator is to get brands and ensure brands are retail ready, regardless if they go to Target or anyone else, but just to provide that support for up and coming brands to know what it takes to actually get on shelves. And so we thought that was exciting. It sounded great. And we applied, not recognizing until we actually were accepted into the program that we were one of 10 out of over 400 people, 400 brands that applied. So it was incredible. It was amazing having that opportunity, only being like 2 months old, and having that experience of being able to actually go to corporate headquarters. This was pre-COVID, everyone, pre-COVID. But we were actually able to spend a week at Target headquarters and had the opportunity to meet directly with the buyer for a category. And so having conversations with the buyer, having conversations with buyers in adjacent categories, and also some of even the senior Target leaders, just to talk about kind of broader vision, and where your brand kind of can plays in the retail landscape was truly invaluable. So that program paved the way for our line review meeting and the conversation with the Target buyer. For Walmart, they actually reached out to us directly. So the buyer for the multicultural hair category, she had come across our Facebook ads, and she has a son herself, and ordered our products and loved them. And so sent us an email. Well, really, it was a line review meeting calendar invite, just kind of threw that on our calendar and said, would love to connect with you guys. We're like, okay. So please believe that's not typical. That's not standard. I've connected with a ton of other founders and entrepreneurs who have retail partnerships, and that's of course not the case every time. But for us, we just had these really unique opportunities to be able to connect with obviously like the two major retailers in the country. So that's how that happened.
Well, okay, so yes, though that is not a standard. Neither of those is kind of a standard way to get into retail.
Mhm.
But once you had kind of those initial conversations going, there were still a lot of things that I think are very relevant for this audience
Mhm.
to know about. And you've alluded to a few of them before, from packaging to pricing and shelf placement, and
Mhm.
even timing of launch, how much inventory you might have to send, what would the
Correct.
terms look like. I mean, we could probably talk all day about all those things,
Correct.
but maybe you could just kind of start with kind of maybe what were the main things that were really important in those initial conversations before you kind of signed on the dotted line that this is when you were going to launch, and then how long did all of that take, and what were some of the, I'm asking you too many questions.
No.
Let's just start with what were some of the main things that you had to go through in those early conversations.
Yes. So to be clear, your line review meeting with a buyer is 20 minutes, no more, um, and sometimes less. So you literally have 20 minutes to talk about these things, which is, and I say that because you need to come prepared and have your pitch down packed. Key things that they're looking for in these conversations. One, what is your unique point of differentiation from what's currently on the market? And in that, kind of helping them understand what is the market opportunity. So similar to how you would do a pitch potentially with investors, the same kind of setup for a buyer, just to kind of paint the landscape for them. And then tie that into how your brand is uniquely addressing this kind of need or this opportunity, while also sharing what is the broader vision for your brand or your products. They also want to understand kind of what is your community or customer base look like? Who are your core customers? Are your core customers the same as a Target guest or a Walmart guest? Where is the overlap? Where are their differences? So talking about your customers, and also talking about it from a perspective of, do you have a strong community base so that when you do get in retail, you're able to drive those customers, drive your core consumers into store, because it's not the retailer's job to market for you. It's not their job to bring in customers for you. They'll give you the shelf space, but you have to be the one to push and market and bring customers in the store. So they want to understand, can you do that? And do you have that kind of solid core customer community base to drive people into store? They also want us to understand supply chain operations. And this is really important for a small brand, indie brand, small businesses, because of course they're not talking about that with your major players. But as a small brand, at the end of the day, they want to make sure that, can you fulfill orders and fulfill them on time? So you have to share with them and help them feel confident that you have your supply chain in order, everything from your manufacturing capabilities to your fulfillment capabilities to kind of your whole 3PL process, in terms of being able to receive POs, fulfill them, coordinate shipping, all of those things, but making sure that you can articulate what that looks like. And then finally, I think a key big piece is just around pricing strategy. Um, and I'll say for us, that was honestly a big part of our conversation, simply because our price point for where we were selling on e-commerce was really high for the category. So for within kind of the kids multicultural set, there was a bit of a price ceiling there. And so we had to do some discussion, some negotiation to talk through, okay, what is the appropriate price point for our products, given that we were on the premium, side. And so we had some good, healthy conversation around that in our meeting. But there's a lot, all that to say, there's a lot of things that you need to kind of hit on in this 20-minute meeting. And I promise you, it's 20 minutes because they're doing all of these meetings with hundreds of brands. And so you just have to be very clear, very crisp, very precise in your pitch, your presentation, so you can make sure you hit all of these things while saving time for areas where they want to dive deeper in. And for us, that was pricing.
And so was the conversation around like competitive brands,
Mhm.
really a conversation about pricing, or was it kind of sprinkled in throughout all of these things, like, your differentiation and supply chain and all of those things? Like, was there constantly sort of this back and forth of like, are they trying to figure out, are you similar to this one or different than this one throughout?
I would say, from our experience, it was more just from a pricing standpoint, simply because for our category and being a kids brand, they're the key players in that category. They sell at a more accessible price point. And because we use premium ingredients, we just needed to negotiate where we could come down to. So just being fully transparent, candid with you all, our price point that we sell online is $14. We've seen the most within the kids category be $9.99, no more than $10. And even more than that, some other kids brands, they retail for like $3.99 or $5.99. So the first, when we had the initial conversation, there was a little bit of push. Well, can you get lower than 10, like $10? Can you come 6, 7? We're like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We can't do that. But we did that in a way where we did, again, this pricing analysis to show what our price point could be when you look at it from a per ounce perspective. So we stacked all of our competitors in the category and broke it down on how much their price retails for when you look at it by ounce. And so that's how we were able to really make the case. And especially when we looked at a similar brand who also was on the premium side, to say, not only we should be priced parallel with that brand, but also we should be placed next to them. So that was also the conversation around shelf placement. So it all kind of tied together, which I think this is just a good to understate. You really need to know your category. When you're talking to a buyer, hopefully doing your research beforehand, so that you're not coming into the conversation unaware of these dynamics or things, but that you can actually make the case of why you should be positioned here or why you should be priced this way. So doing that research really helped us and being really informed about those conversations.
And so as you did that research, you were basically, my guess is you were basically kind of going into Target stores and kind of
Correct.
seeing where things were on the shelf and where those price points were and what the brands were. And so you were pretty prepared, kind of going in,
Correct.
understanding. Yeah.
Yes, not only did we go into stores, but we also even put our products on the shelves. So we kind of snuck in, probably shouldn't do this, but we did it. We snuck in our products, put it on shelves, and took pictures and actually included that in our deck to say, don't we look so nice placed here? This is how we look. But they loved it. They loved it. So that worked for us.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. I mean, I could see how that could have gone very, very wrong.
Right. So that may not work for everybody. So.
Okay, so I think that was kind of a very helpful overview of like the things that the buyer is really looking for. Was any of those things a surprise, or was there anything else that came up that maybe was a surprise that you were not expecting them to ask?
I would say the biggest surprise, honestly, was around store counts. So we came in proposing a really small kind of store count test. Um, and I think it was just, I guess I want to say we were being kind of modest, a little bit humble, like, please, retail partners, like, we'd love to just test in like 50 stores, key African American markets for us. We even listed some of those key cities that we thought we would do well in as a test, based on where our current customers were and are. And so I think it was interesting, in both of the conversations that we had with Target and Walmart, there was like, well, could you actually do more stores than that? What's the max you could do? And so, another good tip, you don't have to have all the answers right away. There'll be some follow-up questions. There'll be things for you to think about, you to consider, that they just want your perspective on. And so we sent follow-up supplemental materials as we thought more about, what made the most sense for our business and brand. And so for us, we told both retailers we didn't want to go in more than 20% of their total store counts to give us that, not only from just being able to support that from an inventory perspective, but also just giving us room to grow over time so we could do a steady build as the years progress. And so we actually kind of pulled back on, the store counts they wanted us to be in. So you don't always have to say yes. Sometimes retailers, they will be excited about your brand. They will be excited about the unique, space or perspective or whatever your offering is. And they want you to go everywhere now. But you need to figure out what makes the most sense for your brand, from a financial perspective, and all the things that come with being able to support, hundreds of stores.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because I think that it's so exciting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they want us to be in all these stores,
Yeah.
but that's so much work and so much inventory, and you're just starting out. So I think that's really a good piece of advice. Okay, so we've talked about pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about margins. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of D2C founders that I talk to, who have started their businesses D2C, and then they're like, okay, if I go into retail like you, like we're going to need to move on price, but that means margins are going to be lower.
Yep.
And, how did you think about that? How did you come to some, I guess, happy balance on,
Mm-hmm.
on the margin front between the two channels?
Yeah, I think this goes back to, again, before we even launched, recognizing what our channel mix would be. We kept that in mind from the get-go. We didn't have a sense of what those margins were going to be until we had those conversations, but we had a sense, based on just our research conversations that we had. No surprise to anyone, but they're 30% minimum when you look at retailer margins. So keep that in the back of your mind. Again, when you think about pricing and what makes sense for your business. And so, for us, because we knew that, we got a sense of that, before we even launched, we kind of built that into our plan and anticipated that, so that it really wasn't that big of surprise when we got to kind of final negotiation and agreements. I'll also say, again, everything's a negotiation. So you can still make the case that, maybe margins could be a little lower. You're a new brand, you're small, whatever it is. You can still, you still have some power of negotiation. And so for us, we certainly did that. And we were able to get a little push, a little movement there to help us, with the recognition that, small business just starting out, doing a couple hundred store tests, making some room for us, in terms of concessions on margins, with the recognition that, we'll get back to standard, as we continue to grow. So I think, again, just knowing that in advance. So as you're setting your pricing model, as you're building out your business kind of forecast, that keeping that in mind will be helpful so that you're not surprised by the time you have these conversations and they come back with terms.
Yeah, I think that's some really helpful perspective. Okay, so we've talked about kind of that first sort of meeting with buyer, and then there's clearly always follow-ups and all this back and forth. What kind of time frame did all this take? Like maybe from that first buyer conversation to launching in store? Like
Mm-hmm.
how many months was that?
So so I'll use Target. That first buyer meeting happened in April, I'd say mid to late April. Um, we had some back and forth through May. We were awarded our business letter officially, I'd say not until late July, early August. And then we didn't receive our first POs until November. And then we just launched in store in January. Well, in December, we'll just call it January. So definitely a couple of months. Definitely a couple of months. It doesn't happen overnight, which, again, when you think about, especially being a small business and inventory and what you need to build that initial pipe for launch, you kind of have to order even before you do have to order before you get your POs.
Mm,
You have to back into it. And even your POs, there may be some slight fluctuations, but you have to just be over prepared. So for us, once we received that business award letter, we went straight to our manufacturer and placed the order or placed our next big inventory order. So yeah, the timeline is long and weird because you kind of need that PO. If you think about inventory financing, they like to see those POs come through, but you can't wait for that because you have to order in advance. And especially this was all happening in 2020, COVID. So we had to order well in advance because of all of the challenges from a manufacturing standpoint because of COVID. So it got a little interesting last year trying to finance and prepare for that initial pipeline build.
and I'm so glad you mentioned the fact that you have to get the inventory started before you even have the PO. And I think this is a question that comes up all the time, which is, okay, if you haven't raised like a lot of money, right,
Mhm.
from venture capital or angels, and you're kind of bootstrapping, you're still a young business, how do you finance it without a PO? How do you finance that inventory?
Oh, I was so I was just on a call with Tope, the founder of Calendly. We participated in this panel, and one thing he said is that entrepreneurs and founders, we're just crazy. Like we're crazy people, and he's absolutely right. We're crazy people, and I say that because, in terms of financing for inventory, we ultimately had to take out a personal loan to be able to do this. And the reason why we had to is because we tried to do small business loans, but we were too early because we had only been in business for less than 6 months at the time, or just becoming 6 months, or whatever the time was. We were too early for that. So we couldn't get all of the funds that way. Um, we also couldn't do, like I said, inventory financing because at the time, again, we were too early. We couldn't do PO financing because we didn't have the POs yet. So there were all these like roadblocks that prevented us from kind of getting that initial funding. But because we're crazy and we were like, there's a way, we're going to make this work, we will not fail. We took out personal debt in order to finance that. Now, it's fine, pin it back, we'll recoup the money when, once we get the payments from, both retail or from Target and Walmart. But you just have to do what you have to do. You have to find a way. If that's begging from family and friends, if that's taking out personal loans, founders, we're crazy people, we'll find a way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just so glad that you said that because I think other founders assume, oh, well, somebody else was able to get that inventory financing, and so how come I can't get it? But
Mhm.
it doesn't exist at that
No,
stage.
no,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
Okay, I have a couple more questions, and then we're going to move on to the audience questions. So I've already gotten a few, but audience, if you'd like to put some questions into the chat, we will get to as many as we can. So let's talk about kind of the launch actually at
Mhm.
Target. So you just had the launch. Um, you as a small brand, you want to maximize that launch, right? This is not like if you build it, they will come. It's to your point, it's not Target's job to get
All
you
right.
customers. So what kinds of things did you have to do to make the launch successful?
Yeah, so a couple different things. So one, we certainly leverage the hell out of our own channels. So email, social, our social channels, web, used all of that to promote. We also did paid social ads. We did Google. We partnered with influencers. We did some PR, which we're doing some more with our Walmart launch. So they'll be kind of going hand in hand. Um, and then we also, which was really great with Target, one of the things that we talked about and proposed to them was, what are ways that we can partner with you to have some additional marketing support. And so they did things like, featuring us in their circular. So we were able to do that. They actually have beauty concierge. And so they're going to highlight two of our products. The beauty concierge will highlight two of our products and talk to people that come into store about two Young King products. And also, because we launched so close to Black History Month, we were able to be featured in some of those efforts too. So, there were, Target was really great in doing some of that support too for launch, but also, again, a lot of it was us and making sure that we are letting our community know about our launch, letting the broader community know through PR efforts about the launch. And then, of course, still running kind of paid social, letting people know, hey, we're in your neighborhood now, check us out in Target. So couple different, tactical things that we did to really support the launch.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that piece about letting your existing community and customers know. I know another brand that I was speaking to said that they basically try to galvanize every single person they knew in every area of, all the stores that they were launching in,
Mhm.
and said, just go and ask about the brand. Like, you don't
Right.
buy it, just go and ask about it. Like, show some, make it a show of support, a show of interest.
Right.
I think some of those things really work, right? And
Absolutely. Yeah, we even did a shelfie contest. So we asked our community, go to the store, take a shelfie with the products, and then you can win a Target gift card. So we did that and saw good results from that. So yeah, anything creative, just pushing people, like just go to store, take pictures, get excited about us, post us online. That all helps.
yeah, that's great. So it's pretty early days because you've just launched at Target and you're about to launch at Walmart. But do you think this kind of Target launch, at least, has affected your D2C business?
Knock on wood, not yet. And actually really surprised about that, candidly. I think, we've just been surprised because we're really continuing to have double digit growth in Target week over week, which has been amazing. And seeing really good sales on target.com also, but our D2C channel has remained really strong. In fact, we actually had our first six-figure month in January, which is
Congratulations.
like crazy, insane at the same time that we just announced launching in Target. So, and even this month, we're continuing to still see continued growth on our D2C channel. So, not yet. I don't think we've felt that yet. Maybe it'll come, maybe it'll happen soon. But I think, we're just so focused, both continuing to still just all of this has to do with growing your community. So no matter how you find us, if you believe in our mission, and come join us and support by either going to Target, going on our channel, soon going to Walmart. So it all just boils down to how are you fostering that community and getting people really excited to find you wherever you're at.
Yeah. That's great, and I think there is always a concern about cannibalization.
Mhm.
Will your D2C business, your higher margin business, kind of go away?
Mhm.
Great to hear that you've had a really good experience so far. So, what are your plans for future wholesale rollouts? How are you prioritizing kind of other channels?
Yeah, so right now, this year we're really just focused on Target and Walmart. We want to make sure that we're having sustained success both in those retailers as we want to continue to grow with them in the years ahead. So we're just bunkered down, really focused on those two retail partnerships. We have been approached by some other retailers, but I think, at this point we'll have the conversations, we'll understand kind of their broader strategy and maybe how our brand fits into that, and have those conversations as we think about even more specialty retail chains. And so, uh, we certainly want to grow and expand, but we want to be thoughtful in that approach. And we don't want to still, even as a young brand, we're only still a year in, overextend ourselves. And so we're working on kind of what that plan looks like. Again, especially because we've had other retail interests, but we're just being really thoughtful about not expanding and growing too soon, and giving ourselves some grace to have that room to grow.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay. I want to get to audience questions. I mean, I still have like more questions, but we will get to the audience questions because I did promise that. So let me start with the first one from Taylor. Where can we find more information about doing the research? What does that mean exactly? Doing the research before you have those line review meetings is when we talk.
Okay, yes. So for us, that was talking to other founders, other entrepreneurs that we knew in our network that had also launched in retail. That was actually having conversations with, we didn't even talk about kind of the broker partnerships that you have. So we used a retail kind of sales broker to support both our partnership with Target, and then we have one with Walmart. And they provide really valuable information and insights around category as well. So having those conversations, and then really from kind of our network too of advisors and those that have been in the space and worked in these spaces and places, having a lot of kind of strategy planning, thoughtful sessions in order to ensure we were prepared to have those discussions with the buyer. So it was kind of like talk to everyone, work with our broker, and then sometimes Google too, just finding things or going in store. Like that's what we did when we were trying to do our pricing analysis. So those were just kind of some of the things that we did when we did our research.
Great. I'm skipping ahead to kind of the most recent question, which is, can you share info for a retail sales broker? How did you find this person?
Um, that goes back to just our network, having relationships with other people in the space, other founders. So getting recommendations of who are good kind of broker partners to work with,
Mhm.
and I think that's important too because the broker it literally represents your brand. So think of the broker as your sales team. So you want to make sure that you have a comfortable, good relationship with that group, and you want to make sure that they always have your best interest in mind. Yes, you're bringing your brand to the table, and yes, you're the ones primarily talking in the line review meeting. But at the end of the day, when it comes to kind of like day-to-day management, sales reports, interactions with the buyer, because please believe you're not talking to the buyer every day. They actually don't want to hear from you all the time because they're so busy. The broker is the one that maintains that direct relationship. So for us, we actually interviewed a couple different um, broker groups, ones that we knew had strong recommendations and had really great ties and relationships with our particular category. And from there, just kind of narrowed down. So that's how we kind of landed with our broker partnerships, just kind of talking to our network, interviewing them, and then ultimately making a decision.
Got it. Okay. Actually, now I'm going to go out of order. I'm going to forget all the questions, but that's Chelsea's question, which is a follow on to that is, did you find a broker that was commission based or retainer based?
Commission based. So they work off of commission based on your POs, your
Okay.
sales essentially.
All right. I'm going back up to the top again. Sorry for anybody who thought that I skipped them. Okay. Okay. So now you're doing kind of retail and D2C, you're a young company. How are you splitting your time between the two channels
Oh,
and your teams?
um, oh, I'll tell you, honestly, retail takes a lot of time. And I think I would say probably because we're just launching. So there's a lot of time spent up front, not only in preparation for your launch, but just in terms of making sure things are happening according to the timeline you need them to happen. So you certainly work with various partners and vendors. There's just a whole tribe of people that are in on this, but you ultimately are kind of guiding the ship. At least that's the role I took because I'm very particular. And so it was just making sure that, manufacturer, you're getting the products to our fulfillment partner, are you shipping on time? Fulfillment partner, you see these POs coming through, invoices on the back end, are those being transmitted? So it's just kind of making sure things are flowing accordingly, and really leveraging the relationships you have with your various partners to make sure things are happening on the back end. So I will say retail for me, hands down, requires a lot more time. And hopefully, as we continue to grow older and get more experience and have this down pack, it'll be less of my time. Versus D2C, that's pretty, I mean, it just kind of runs. It's pretty straightforward in terms of just that's just making sure that your fulfillment partner is kind of shipping those orders directly to your customer. So retail for sure, I definitely takes the most time.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Um, Taylor had a question, which I think we a little bit answered, which is what was the timeline for the business from conception to today? And we know you launched in December 2019. We talked about that, but when did you kind
Mhm.
of conceive of the idea? So, kind of maybe what was that piece of the timeline?
So conceived of the idea late 2016, didn't action on it, I'll say, until 2017, about the spring 2017. And that's when I started actually like formulating a business plan and doing some competitive analysis. And even started to survey. So I actually did a survey of about 100 boy parents to understand what needs they had and what were they seeing in the marketplace. So I did all of that work, that leg work, kind of the first part of 2017. And then formally got my husband slash co-founder to join in the fun. And so then from there, that's, I'd say mid 2017 is when we started really hunkering down and looking for, a product formulator, a manufacturing partner, so that we could actually get to work in developing the product. So basically 2017, 2018 launched December 2019.
Great. Very helpful. Okay. The next question, sorry, I just lost the next question. Where did it go? Oh, from Joyce. Do you have the same pricing in retail and D2C?
No, we don't, Joyce. And that's a very good question. So for us, we still maintain the price that we kind of launch the products with on our e-commerce channel. But we have a lower price point for retail. So one of our strategies is to really kind of monitor to see if there's an impact. If we notice a negative impact in our e-commerce channel due to the price difference. Like I said, as of now, we haven't seen any impact, which has been interesting. I mean, interesting in a good way. So we haven't seen any impact. So we're going to maintain for now, recognizing that at some point we may need to adjust to make sure that all prices are the same across each channel. But for now, we do have two different price points.
Got it. Okay. Can you talk more about how to think about channel conflict given the lower wholesale margins relative to D2C? Are you finding the awareness and distribution benefits of wholesale completely outweigh any margin dilution?
That's a good question. I think it just depends on on you and kind of your business and what you ultimately think is best for your target customer and consumer. For us, like I said, because we always had wholesale in mind, retail in mind, um, we knew that's where we were going to be. And so we were going to make it work. And so built, our pricing, our brand, like we built things around that. But if you're coming in, and especially I would say for more kind of prestige brands, and you're thinking about mass, there just might be a disconnect there. And that's okay. It's not, for everybody. Like some retailers are not for everybody. So it just really depends on your business and brand and what makes sense for you. For us, in terms of margins and kind of planning through that and thinking about that, it didn't, having that retail partnership, being able to negotiate those margins, having things work out where it didn't impact our business at the end of the day. Because let's be clear, some brands go into retail and they're not profitable and it has a negative impact on their business. And we didn't want to be one of those. And so I think just having that thoughtful strategy and approach as you design and build out your financial models, your planning, your price, like all of those things, I think that'll help you make some determinations of what makes the most sense for your brand and the type of wholesale partnerships that you'll enter.
Yeah, for sure. The next question is from Belinda. Target and Walmart have very strict supply chain guides for brands. How did Young King navigate the ins and outs of fulfillment as a new brand?
Definitely relied heavily on our brokers. So they know it. Like that's their space, their playground. They've worked with brands for years. Your broker partners are really key in helping you as a new brand navigate those waters. And all retailers aren't the same. So what Target does is different from Walmart, what Walmart does, which is different from what Ulta does. Like they're all different. So you need to be sure that whoever you're working with, your broker can help you and knows it. We rely so heavily on them, can't even lie. And so that's our go-to to navigating kind of supply chain management, fulfillment, shipment for all those retailers.
Great, thank you. From Michael. Michael Nogan. Hi, Cora. Can you share the biggest mistake you've made and the key takeaway?
Biggest mistake. I would say the biggest mistake that, I think I've made is the recognition is what I just actually literally said. Not retailers operate the same. I think you think there's a certain process and way to do things that you anticipate with another retailers that's completely opposite from the next one. And so I thought that this process, I knew it wouldn't be smooth when you're getting started, you're onboarding, you're getting ready to launch with a retailer, but I just didn't anticipate all of the various challenges that would come depending on the retailer. So I'm not going to say names, but it just took, from an operation standpoint, it took a lot of time and energy just to get things right. And maybe it's also because I'm just very particular and I want it to be right. And I want things to happen and things to move quickly. And sometimes that's just not the case. And so you need to recognize when you can step in and intervene and push things along and when you can't. And that's just what it is. And so that's my biggest lesson. Just recognizing that there are going to be differences between retailers and learning where you can push and pull and where you can't, and being comfortable in that.
Fair, very fair. Okay. The next question is, have you heard of crowdsourcing? Chains of barbershops here in the Bay Area. I know the founder, if that could help. And also a robotic shaving machine. They're going in subways. This all sounds very interesting.
What? Send me that. That's cool.
Okay. And then the question here is it expanding product or brand portfolio now? I'm not sure what this question means. Is it expanding product or brand portfolio now? And when are teams taking how much commission? AD, can you re-put that question in? I don't think we're understanding. Are you understanding this question, Cora?
No, okay. I don't think I am.
And explain your question a little bit better while we move on to the next one. Okay. Question: are D2C brands capable of drop shipping, interested in drop shipping directly into specialty retailers via an automated platform? This is actually a question for both of us. And what kind of wholesaler distributor commissions are you comfortable with as a brand? Okay. I think the first question, maybe if you could answer it yourself, like, would you do drop shipping into specialty retailers? Is that something you've thought of?
I haven't given it a ton of thought, but I think it's something to think about. Something to think about.
I mean, I think there are a lot of brands that are very interested in some of these things. And I think it really depends on what else you got going on. I mean, you have something going on right now.
Right.
This might not move the needle as much as like getting Walmart launched. And then what the second part of that was, what kind of wholesaler distributor commissions are you comfortable with as a brand?
So I guess I don't want to, I'll just share most brokerage commissions are anywhere, say 5%.
Mhm.
So I think you just have to understand if that's something you're comfortable with. Again, everything's a negotiation. So we asked for things that were different than that number, and we got that. So it just it just depends.
And I wonder if that's, and I don't have that much experience with retail brokers. And I also wonder, by category and kind of the,
Yeah, there may be some different. You're right. Yeah,
and
I
by,
don't know. There might be differences by category. That's true. That's
yeah.
true.
Yeah. So that's something that I think each brand would have to figure out on their own a little bit of kind of what's relevant for them. Um, Taylor. Oh, I see. Taylor's asking, is the product that you have on D2C a different product since you're pricing it higher on the site and lower?
Oh, okay, got it. No, so it's the same products. So right now we have 5 products, and 3 of them are in Target, and all 5 will be in Walmart. And so, well, we did do one change, so we made a smaller size offering for Walmart of one of our products. All that to say, we still kept, again, our original pricing on our e-commerce platform, but adjusted it for the retailers.
Great. Got it. Okay. From Karen, would you do anything differently? That's a very broad question.
That's so broad. Would I do anything differently? Um, I I'm just trying to think. I guess the only the only thing differently that I think I would have done, and this goes back to like capital and having money, is to bring in someone, dedicated to operations, and kind of supporting, these launches from retail perspective. It really did take a lot of my time, and there's only 2 of us for the business right now. We'll be expanding our team soon, but right now, there's 2 of us. But so just having someone that could have supported in that area would have been it would have been a game changer for us.
Yeah, I believe that. A lot of work. Okay, I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. The next one is, any advice on interacting and connecting with retailers while we're in COVID? There are limited
Mm,
trade shows, touch
mhm,
points, and the industry is going through a lot now. So, and you
mm.
did all of this through COVID, really?
Yeah, I did. I did. Which was a good thing in terms of um, just, being able to get on the calendar, right? Even though, Walmart reached out to us, but the fact that we didn't necessarily have to like fly there in person, it was just a Zoom, both of our line review meetings were Zoom calls, 20 minutes, Zoom calls. Um, and so, some of the recommendations I would have, reaching out to buyers if you happen to know their information. And some buyers will tell you this, like, I don't kind of blind reach out to me, but I've heard some cases where some founders just like emailed them, and their email was so compelling that a buyer responded. So it's like, you can just try. Obviously the best way to get in is having that direct connection with another brand that's already in store and already working with that buyer to see if they could bridge that introduction for you. Um, but I will say, if that happens, make sure that you understand that you're ready and that you're not just asking for that meeting, and not prepared for it. So, there's a couple different ways for you to try to get in to bridge those conversations with the buyers. And you just kind of have to figure out, what makes sense for you in terms of either kind of blindly reaching out and hoping you get a response, or if it makes sense, if someone, I know another founder that can maybe do that introduction for you.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it's funny. Like we'll see how if things really go back to the way it was. I mean, are there going to be lots of trade shows again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All
Uh,
virtually.
and 20 minutes goes feels longer on Zoom somehow than in real life. So get through more of it, more of your pitch. Okay, the next question is if D2C and mass channels have different pricing, everybody's very interested in pricing, that's clear. How do the buyers, and I'm assuming this means like the target buyer,
Mm-hmm.
feel about that price discrepancy?
I, I don't think they care. I hate to say it like that. Like, I mean, they care what's going into their store in their segment. So that's what they're more concerned about is how are you pricing it for my store, my shelf. And so that's where the conversation is around what you're kind of doing on your D2C channel, your e-commerce, like fine, but what are you doing in store is a different story. So that hasn't come up at all.
Interesting. I think the other side of that question is really interesting is, which you haven't seen, which we just talked about, which is that do your consumers switch over to where
Right, right.
that's
We're watching that.
yeah,
We are watching
bigger
that.
question. Okay, last question, and then we really have to wrap up. Okay, this is back to AD's question in more basic terms. What's your brand expansion strategy? Are you planning to expand lines, brands, or channels? And how much? Okay, let's stop there.
Sorry. So the first part is
is
what is our brand
what's your
expansion
expansion
strategy?
strategy? Are you expanding product lines, brands, or channels? Maybe all of those other things.
Product lines for sure. So our vision is to be kind of the personal care brand for young men of color. And so we really want to create products that grow with the boy all the way from when they're very young. So we're talking babies all the way till they're like 18 and kind of into that first shade grown man stage. And so, in doing that, we want to create products that both address kind of hair care needs, but also skin care, body, and and kind of all types of personal care needs. And so that's what we'll be focused on as we expand the brand. In terms of different brand offerings, we want to stay true to what our core is and our mission is, and that's all around serving young men of color. We've been asked oftentimes, we actually even were asked by our buyer around, young queen. And so while we've trademarked it, I don't know that that's where we'll go, but we're focused on really creating those personal care products for young men of color.
Great. Okay, we are completely out of time. Cora, thank you so much. Very much appreciate your time today and
Thank
all
you.
the insight. This was great. And to everyone who is still on the call, you will receive more information about the next Retail X session soon. So keep your eyes peeled. Thanks again, Cora.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
Talk
Bye.
soon. Bye.